to Charmed Life, a radio show discussing spirituality, magic, and the unconditional love of the universe. Thanks for tuning in. And I'm your host, Tricia Carr. I'm so excited about today's show. I'm going to burst. All right, before I get to today's show, I do want to tell you about two quick little things. First of all, if you're watching this, or excuse me, if you're listening to this on the podcast version on iTunes, iHeartRadio, I would encourage you to actually go back to my YouTube channel and watch it because we have some visuals that are going to stun you. All right, and if you're listening live or watching live on Facebook or on any of my social media outlets, or on ubnradio.com/channel-1, thank you so much. And you are welcome to call in and share your stories about animal connection. 323-524-2599. I want to tell you that next Sunday, this will be, what month am I in? September 16th, I am hosting another one of my mediumship intuitive development classes. I have just a very few amount of spots available for that, but if you want to go to my website, triciacarcharm.com, go to Healing Arts Academy under Work With Me, you'll be able to see a schedule of all kinds of things I have going on there. On-demand classes, and of course that class, which is next Sunday. And it's actually a really low cost, really phenomenal short little class, a couple of hours, just a single class, and I would love to have you. We actually will practice using your intuitive abilities at whatever level you are, whether you're a beginner or an intermediate. Check it out. I'm doing it about twice per month. Also, my Patreon community, patreon.com/Tricia Carr. Tomorrow night, we have a Zoom group meeting. So we're all going to get together. We're going to shine. We're going to fellowship. Sometimes I do reading. Sometimes I do channeling. Sometimes I heal. Sometimes everyone just shares their own light. And we just do whatever spirit leads. So go check out my Patreon community. Again, patreon.com/Tricia Carr. We always have something fun going on there monthly. And finally, I'm so excited about today's show. I have a very special in-studio guest. Well, several, but I have a habit of looking at the one in particular. That's how I am. So I've been talking about it. This guest came all the way from Arizona to Hollywood. We have Kristin Allen. We have Dustin Brown. And, of course, we have the most famous, the Screaming Staffy named Mo. Well, Mowgli is actually his full name, but he goes by Mo. Yep. I'm going to put this next to your
Yes, yes. Mowgli is the full name, but he just looked like a Mo.
He's a Mo. Look at that. Can we see him well on the camera, Kurt? Hey, Kurt. Yeah. Oh, I also want to say hello to the Lightworkers Lab online spiritual community. Last week, I was away on a retreat with the Lightworkers Lab. It's founded by my friend Crystal Ann Compton. You can find the Lightworkers Lab and join by searching the Lightworkers Lab in Facebook for the group. So, hey, Lightworker Lab, you should join. You'd love it. And so should your sister, who's into all this stuff. All right. So the reason I have, well, I mean, what other reason do you need than that face? He's doing so well.
Yes.
Kristin and Mo have a viral video. They've stolen the hearts of the world recently with their beautiful story. Now, I just feel like I want to let you take it away, Kristin. Tell about how you and Mo came together.
Sure. So,
I'm sorry.
The story goes, I found him last June on a Saturday evening. I was returning to my apartment later in the evening around 10:30. I had actually just returned from dog sitting. And as I
didn't know that part. That's really cool.
And I was pulling up to the curb to park my car. And I thought I saw the silhouette of a dog walking across the street. And until I parked my car, got out, and walked to the end of the curb, did I confirm that it was a dog, and he was by himself. Yeah. And so I called out to him. I just said, "Hey, buddy, what are you doing?" And he stopped, and he looked across at me, wagging his tail.
You remember, buddy?
And then he kind of just kept walking, and I called out again, just said, "Where are you going?" And he turned around and slowly, calmly, wagging his tail the whole time, walked across the street towards me. And when he approached me, finally he rested his head on my knee and just looked up at me with this big smile. And I was like, okay, well, let's go.
I know I've heard the story a million times, but I'm crying again.
So he stayed with me that evening, and he made himself very comfortable right away. Yeah. He did, despite being as dirty as he was, he did sleep in my bed that night, woke up literally with his head underneath my armpit. And I really did want to see if his owners were out there looking for him. So I did give it a chance. We ended up going to the shelter, animal control. And I did leave him there during the holding period, but I visited him every day during that time, those 3 days. I'd leave work and go straight to the shelter and sit outside his kennel until they really closed for the evening. And then on the day that he became adoptable, I headed back to the shelter and stood in line and was very possessive about it. I think everyone there thought I was a bit nuts at that point, but I'm here to get this dog. He's coming home with me. And he came home with me the following day. So he did have to stay overnight, one more night to get neutered. But he was, by the time I took him home, he was not in good shape.
Yeah.
He, was very sad, had gotten sick, had gotten kennel cough.
Oh,
and
no.
then on top of having to go through the surgery, there was a couple of weeks that were just a really kind of tough recovery.
Yeah.
But
having to adjust. There are so many synchronicities and amazing just I don't. The reason I wanted you, I saw your story. So by the way, their video, if you want to look up Mo, the Screaming Staffy, it's a Dodo video. If you guys don't know what the Dodo is, it's basically like a website that loves animals and makes videos.
They love animals. They produce interesting animal stories, not just dogs, any kind of animal. So
I've seen otter stories on there and everything. Yeah, but there, I mean, just so like we met yesterday, and there's just so much synchronicity and like between you and Mo, but also with you and Dustin is like really amazing. Dustin and Kristin started dating about a year ago, but they just like you already have been rescuing like pit bulls and large dogs, right, Dustin?
Yeah, I moved here or to Arizona about 14 years ago, and I kind of just fell in love with the breed. I didn't even know what a pit bull was, and I saw one that was just in terrible conditions and rescued him, and my parents actually ended up taking him in upstate New York because they have a ton of land. But since then, I rescued 3 more, and I've been a pit bull lover ever since.
That's amazing. And he's a Staffordshire Terrier, but it's like a kind of variety of pit bull. Is that, or they're related somehow, right?
He's an American Staffordshire Terrier, which is a breed that falls under pit bull type dogs.
Okay.
So many people
Boxers
think that pit
right?
bull is a breed. It's actually a type of dog, and there's other breeds that fall under that category.
That just reminded me of something hilarious. I grew up with all kinds of dogs, and my dad was a hunter and stuff too. And we had one time what I think it was a Brittany, I think it's called. But my dad always just called her a bird dog. So I thought that's what her breed was. And my husband was telling him about how we had a bird dog. I was like, yeah, bird dogs, they point and everything. And my husband was like, wait, what kind of dog was it? And I was like, a bird dog. And he's like, no, what kind of dog? And I said, bird. Like, that's definitely not a breed. But it's a category. It's kind of like a right, like exactly. The pit bull. Well, some of the synchronicities that are called out to my heart was the timing of it as well. Tell everyone about the timing of Mo finding you.
Yeah, well, I guess first off, last year, the beginning of the year, it was kind of a difficult time for me. I think I was doing a lot of soul searching myself, trying to figure out what I really wanted to be doing in life. I was kind of finishing up things with a personal relationship, as well as wondering what direction to take my personal and professional career in, and I definitely had a lot of doubts and was kind of down in the dumps, I guess.
So this is one of Mo's features. It's actually why he's called Mo the Screaming Staffy. Is he describes it a lot of the time it's singing. I actually connected with Mo this morning, so we'll talk about that. But if you hear that, that's actually him singing for you guys, or for the hot dogs.
Right now he's singing for hot dogs. But yeah, and then I found him on the Saturday. The next day was Sunday the 18th, which 2017 was Father's Day, and coincidentally also the day my father's birthday fell on. And my father passed away when I was 16. He was in a snowmobiling accident, and it was a tragic thing for the family. And so he's still a presence that's with me every single day. And so just when it actually did end up happening, that he came into my life, I just felt that there was some reasoning behind it, that, I maybe I can't be going through these things all by myself. Maybe I need something or someone.
Your dad came through this morning too in my session, and that's something that he talked about. So I have my notes. I'll share it with you in a minute. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
You're like, I want to hear that part.
Right. Can we just skip ahead?
Yeah, we can. We definitely can. Well, I want to tell everyone, I keep saying synchronicity, and I do want to take a moment to talk about that, and I want to let you guys know this as well. What synchronicity is, it's you aligning with the truth of who you are, and therefore aligning with the universe, aligning with the all. It's connecting with the truth that's in your heart, and then everything just flows in perfect harmony. I mean, the disharmony or the dissonance that we experience is just like part of the game. I mean, we created video games. It's really kind of like what we're doing here from that soul perspective. We're playing a video game. And the challenges make it kind of fun, because then it would be boring game if you were just like, not having anything to grow and anything to learn from. That's kind of the overall experience. But clicking in and being in flow is absolutely our natural state. And so the things that you guys, how everything, you just think about it when we meet our partners or something, and you're like, I was on the dating app, that when people think like dating apps are disenchanting or something like that. And I'm like, no, but you guys joined the same dating app and there's like millions. Like that's all, that's a synchronicity. And you swiped that day or whatever it is. There are a lot. But, my husband and I met in a nightclub, and we both happened to be there. Like all of that stuff is just clicking in to the truth of who you are. And so that's a lot of what happened here as I connected with Mo this morning. And then, like I said, your dad came through. So would you like me to share some of that? Yes. I know you're pretty anxious.
I would love to.
I already shared with them as we met outside the studio. I was like, was he constipated this morning? And Kristin's like, he was.
How did you know?
Because he told me, he's like, I got a little stuffy in my bum this morning.
These hot dogs aren't going to help the rest of the day.
Well, it's gonna create a little more weight, and it's gonna have to come through. All right. Well, I'll just go ahead and share some of these notes, and then we'll get back into your story, because I know that I don't want to keep you hanging on for some of the stuff that's come through. I know you know a lot of it because you're so connected. But I think it'll be really cool for you to sort of hear some of maybe some of the details. So I first reached out to him, and he was like, oh, he recognized me because we met yesterday, and he was really excited to talk. And I asked him, I wanted to ask him if he knows how famous he is. You know what I mean? Like, can he feel when people, because that's what
a good question.
Yeah.
Because people ask me all the time. I'm like, I'm not sure he notices.
Yeah. It's interesting. And that's what my Franzi, one of my cats, had a viral video too. And so he kind of, when I asked Franzi about it, like, can you tell that people are, experiencing you and everything? And it's Mo's kind of the same way. It's just kind of like, yeah, but it's normal. Like, it feels normal to him. Like, look at this. What? So I said, do you know that people know who you are, is kind of the way I asked the question. He says, I feel it sometimes. When he says I feel it sometimes, it was kind of like the video, like the video attention. Mm-hmm. He sometimes feels that, and I think he feels it because of you in particular. Like, he feels how you feel it. Mm-hmm. Well, you guys feel it. He says, I feel it sometimes, and it feels good when people notice me. So that's more about him being like in the crowd. It's seriously like hanging out with Beyonce. People don't even know that he has a famous viral video. And
yeah, I mean, he gets positive attention, even without people knowing.
Yeah, he's famous.
That it all happened. So I mean, they're just
handsome
man.
He's
such a handsome boy.
He's so that smile.
Can I pet him?
Yeah. So. He says, sometimes I wait for people to notice me. They feel good when they come close to me. I told him, you just have a great smile. And he says, well, I'm happy a lot. And he says, I said, do you have any questions for your mom and I feel like Papa, when I refer to you, is how he wants to talk about you. And it actually is how he referred to his previous humans as well. He referred to a man as Papa. So maybe that's where he learned that. But that's how the energy comes through when he's referring to you, is the word Papa rather than Dad. He says, I said, do you have any questions for your family? And he said, well, Mom gets very serious before she goes because you have to travel for work. Yeah. So he feels you kind of almost click into a different mode right before you have to go travel. And he said that, but it's been getting a little more mellow. I guess you're probably getting more used to your schedule is what it seems like.
A little bit, yeah.
So he's just kind of wondering like why.
I think just knowing that it's happening.
Yeah.
You know, before it was more like first times that I had to kind of go. But now kind of knowing that it'll be part of a routine. Yeah. I guess it maybe hopefully will get easier for both of us. I'd say more so for me.
Totally. Yeah. And so has it been like 3.5 months or something that the travel? Two only?
Oh, sorry. No.
That you've been traveling more?
No, you're right. It is 3.5 because I prior also to starting a new job in July, prior to that I was also doing some international travel because I was consulting on my own. So yes, it actually probably was more like 3.5.
Okay, that's what it felt like when I asked him. I was like, how long has Mom been doing this? And I kind of felt this time block. It felt like 3.5. Didn't really quite feel like 4 months. It was pretty precise. He's like, his heart knows exactly how long it is. And so I could feel that energy. He says, oh yeah, she's relaxing about it. The first time I was worried. He was actually worried because you were so like kind of like tense about it, and Papa missed her a lot the first time. So everybody's getting a little more used to it. It tells me like, you know, you're getting used to the time away. I asked him what his favorite toys were. It's kind of a common question that I ask animals, and his answer was simply food.
Yes. Yes, he'll do anything and everything for food.
I'm like, but toy, and he's like, food?
Yeah.
Okay. All right then. That's the most fun thing in life is food. Let's see.
He does have some. I mean, he plays with the ball. When I first got him, he didn't really seem to know what the ball was. And then when we'd go to the dog park and he'd start to see the other dogs chasing a ball, it was almost like him thinking like, yeah, that's maybe what I should be doing.
Yeah, I don't think he had that before you. Yeah, he didn't have think, hi, baby, looking at me? Yeah, hi, honey. You're so handsome. I don't have any food. He's like, can you make them do it? So he says, I was just asking him, like, you know, what do you have to share? What's life like? And he said, it's hard at the trainer, but I'm getting better. At first, I didn't know what to do, and it was very confusing. So he kind of like brought me in when he was first experiencing training and stuff, where he was just like, he didn't know how to even be present. There was so much going on, and he didn't feel like, you know, he just didn't get it even. Yeah. Is that what it was like?
His very first day that we went to a group pit bull training class at Maricopa Shelter with the One Love Pit Bull Foundation, he screamed the probably first 45 minutes of our training class. Oh, honey. And it was very stressful for not just him or me, but I think everyone that was in the training, including the other dogs. So, right. But it got better, and he, you know, we would do different activities, just basic commands, and then also different kind of obstacle like activities, and he became more and more confident. Yes. And by like the last time we went to that training, he was extremely confident, and he would still kind of make some little screams, sings, whatever, here and there, and he still does, but there was a very big difference. But yes, I agree with that. He didn't understand why he was there.
Yeah, it was just, he didn't have any, it was like he felt very ungrounded is what it was kind of like. He says then it was like I just woke up one day and then one thing just clicked and I got very excited because then he was like, oh, I get it, and it's actually fun, you know. He didn't know how to kind of relate, I guess, is the deal. I said, is this when you screamed? And he says, yes, I was so happy when he screamed. Like when he was doing it then, when he's with you, it's because he was so happy. I said, when did you start screaming? And he said, I found the place in my voice when. And then this is like, I was kind of asking him about where he was before he found you. And so I'll tell you what I saw, what I experienced. He was kept in a kennel. It was like a large one. It wasn't too small. It wasn't very confined a lot of the time. There was at least one other dog who was in the area, but like it was like she was kind of in the distance. So it was, I don't know if it was a large property. I just see, or a really big backyard or something like that. And there could have been more dogs there, but I really only feel and see one dog in his awareness. So I think it was just the two of them. And it was a female. And they wouldn't really get a lot of contact. They were left alone. And so he couldn't make contact with her. He worried about her a lot and actually longed for her. And he felt she was a little younger than him, so he felt protective for her. she would whine a lot. So when she was over there doing that kind of normal thing that dogs do, like, he started to like really, I don't know, take on a lot of that energy too. And it's almost like he found, like I say, he found a place in his voice that made that sound. That. So when he first started to do that, he was saying sometimes I would be calling out because I wanted people. I needed, you know what I mean? Like they were so lonely, and he'd be calling out for her. So it did have an anxious, obviously a very anxious thing. But then after he learned it, this is when it started to become as a way to pass time too. And he was like singing. So if you can imagine if you were really lonely and you just like, well, I know some songs. I'll just kind of like sing really loud and, you know, express myself. So it's just processing energy in a lot of different ways. And I know you guys notice that if he's just excited, sometimes it's just stimulated, good or bad. It's just, it happens.
Yes.
And we're calling out for attention too. He says, so to him, a lot of the time it feels like singing is the way I would translate it, the way it feels to me. This friend, she was younger than him, and she was a chocolate color, this little girl dog. And I said, did you get to spend time together? And he says, yes. When they would come, meaning the human, we would come out and we would play together. It's interesting. Their bond was more about survival. So when they no longer were together, like he doesn't have remorse over her. It's, you know, he doesn't have grief that he's carrying around about her. Because it was about this survival and this need to sort of take care of one another. I said, did you get to play every day? And he says, no, not always. And then when they took her away, they would let me go on my own outside of the crate. So I think they were keeping them separate maybe to not let them mate since he was unneutered.
He was
not
neutered. Yep.
I feel like, I mean, he doesn't know, this isn't information he would have. I feel like she was sold or, you know, given away or something like that. Sold probably to be able to breed, you know. I don't know. I didn't get a clear picture of what she looked like, but she does seem like his similar stature. So probably either a pit or, you know, boxer or a Staffordshire Terrier. Probably a Staffy. Or maybe they thought she was a Staffy and she wasn't. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
So then I said, were there any humans who loved you? And he tells me there was a thin man. I was sad. I was sad to have him as my papa. I cared for him, but he couldn't see me, meaning like he didn't know who I was. And I didn't see him enough, so he wasn't around enough. So this man who was his caretaker wasn't around all the time. But when he would come, he would sit with me and I would roll around, you know, rolling around because they need so much attention, you know, like because he was so starved for attention. And he would be patient. He'd let him roll around. So he was kind to him when he was there. He didn't really connect with them very deeply. And he was never like, it was like he was neglected, but he wasn't abused. You know what I mean? But the neglect was to the point of abuse, I would say. You know, it was ignorance. Yeah.
I guess my comment is he didn't seem, you know, he wasn't afraid of people.
Yeah, exactly. So he connected with this man. Yeah. It's just he didn't have enough attention.
Yeah.
And the fact that he didn't connect with him deeply makes a lot of sense how he found you and was just like, that's it. So one day, basically, he left because he wasn't kept in the crate all the time, but he was lonely. And it was just kind of like, I'm done. And his heart told him to leave. He says, my heart told me to leave. I traveled a while. I followed my heart. I found cat food. That's how he was eating because I was like, did you hunt? And he's like, I don't know what that is. No. Because he was fed. And he says, I traveled a while, but then as I kind of feel into the timeline more, it feels like 2.5 days. It doesn't actually feel that long. But for him, it was a long time, you know, and it was sad. And he says, because he didn't have a home. And then he says, I saw my angel, you. He says, my heart knew her.
Aww.
He said, Papa, and he started talking about Dustin. He says, he is so good to me. He is gentle and he can see me. And he's also strong, which we know is physically true because he has to carry him sometimes. But the gentleness and the strength that you show is just like such a home for him as well. Oh, and he looked at Dustin when he just lied. So he says, Mama is my angel. She is beautiful and our hearts fit perfectly. So it's really like, again, that heart connection.
Like it'll fit more once you give me that hot dog.
Yeah, exactly. So then I asked, because I know you wanted to know this, do you know Kristin's dad? And he says, he says, I feel love in the sky. I feel safe. And that is because like your dad watching over and just being there for all of you. And then here my notes say he's a little constipated today. So we're kind of going a little all over the place.
You got shiny ball syndrome, just like your mom.
So then I asked that you wanted to know because he has a fear or like an apprehension about Great Danes and tall dogs. That was something that Kristin and Dustin wanted to know about because it's awkward. It's odd because he's not afraid of other dogs. He doesn't show that apprehension.
No, he's very friendly with other dogs, and he has been around a couple Great Danes at the park where he's been fine. And it's normally just if they're really high energy and kind of galloping around like horses, and it's like it's a lot for him. And I just look at I interpret it as he doesn't understand why they're that much bigger than him.
Yeah, that's what it kind of felt like. And he doesn't have a lot of flexibility like this. His neck is a little, I don't know if it's typical for his breed or something, but I guess, and you see that so this feels awkward to him. I'm getting away from the microphone. To look up. But it also made me think that it has to do with his former human, who was, he shows him to me as a thin man. I don't think this man was like, as humans are concerned, like super tall, but for a dog, he's tall. So I think he actually has a similar physique, but in dog form, and that's confusing to him. He says they're confusing. He says, so thin and strange shaped. I don't know how to predict how they will move. That's what he says about him. And then, like I said, it's also that he's like kind of tight or not so limber, so looking up to them, and it's just kind of awkward for him. So, yeah, he just doesn't know how to process why that dog. And I'm like, well, why not little dogs? He's like, well, they're just like right there.
They are just like, right there.
They're so different than you too. And he's like, but they're just like right there. So he doesn't mind them at all. Look at that face. That's amazing. Dog man. So do you have any questions about that? Because your dad, I did feel your dad come through and talk a little bit too, if you want to.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I guess one thing for me, I haven't felt that presence of my father since I was 16, and the time that I really felt him come across was like a few days after he had passed, and I think it was after the funeral, and that I ended up having a dream, and in the dream, I was sitting on the tire swing of the oak tree that used to sit in our yard. When I was a child, we lived on a horse farm, and we had this big oak tree that my dad had hung a tire swing from. And in the dream, I'm sitting on the tire swing, and it's not moving, but all of a sudden, I feel a push.
Oh my gosh.
And I turned around, and it was my father. And I was all surprised, and I just said, Dad, what are you doing here? And he just says, I came to say goodbye. And that was it. That was all I remember, but it still is one thing that remains very vivid in my mind, and I haven't had any of that kind of connection ever since. And like I said, he's still very present to me in the sense that I think about him all the time. But yeah, that was my curiosity in terms of his actual kind of presence.
Well, he's in your heart, and it feels very native. He's a part of you, and you're a part of him. And so that's why, like, that was him shifting from the feeling of him being separate from you. And that's why it was a goodbye, because now he is so much a part of you that, you know what I mean? Like, but he is, every time you get a ton of signs, all of these signs that show up for you, and all of this synchronicity, that's him overseeing you. He was saying how much he loves, really, I mean, even though it's obviously sad to have a shorter life and to leave your family, but from his perspective now, what he loves so much is that it's like you're his little girl, and he gets to watch. Like, he was telling me about how that time when you were wanting to go get Mo at the shelter, and you were like worried for a minute that you weren't going to be with Mo. He was like, it was really kind of cute. It's like watching a little kid get really frustrated over something that's so not a problem. You know what I mean? Like, and it was like adorable. It's like not to, because he's like, sweetheart. Oh my gosh, he's so yours. And he did send Mo to you. The way that when Mo was saying, I felt like he followed his heart, your dad placed a bit of his energy in Mo's heart, and then that's how, like a magnet, that's how you found each other, and that's how your hearts fit together. It's that connection from your dad. And that's how, that's just the resonance that brings you together. So your dad says, I've always loved animals.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's true.
I knew it was a way that I could connect with you. So it's a literal way that he can connect with you in a physical form. And so since, like you're saying, like to feel that moment of separation is no longer a thing. So this is a way for you to experience him. He said, I placed a part of my energy in Mo's heart. He felt me, and then that was magnetizing you together. And he says it happens because you did ask for help. And, you always connect with him every day. He says, you called me, and daily you call me, yes, but you opened your heart up even more this one particular time. And I don't know if you remember having a specific prayer or just something. Yeah. Is there a specific time you prayed, or I just really need help? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you opened yourself up to it, and your dad answered. And that was like, for Mo, it was just like, it's time to go. And his heart just brought him forward. Mm-hmm. And Mo says, I feel love in the sky. It's like your dad is just this big presence holding space for you all the time and directing you all the time. I told you, he showed me, I saw that you have two sisters. Are you the middle, or is it like, okay, I was like, you're either the middle or the one who's, or you'd act like the middle.
I am the middle.
They're the middle, okay. So your dad, okay, by the way, I don't know, do you know a Michael or a Richard? Because these are other people in your field. Okay. I'll think about it later. I think Michael could be Archangel Michael, who also works. Was your dad in, like as a career, did he do something that was either, I don't know. See, Michael tends to be the archangel who oversees really brave men who are either in law enforcement or guarding people or protecting people and being like valiant kinds of, positions.
He was a builder. He was a home builder.
Okay.
And he did
very manly
own,
position though.
Yeah. He did end up having his own business.
Okay.
His own home building business.
Well, the final thing that your dad said was, keep following your heart, have fun, help others. That is all you need to do, like with your entire life, and in that order even. Follow your heart, have fun, help others. Not in any other order, because any other order, it will cause a deficit for you. Yeah. And also just a reinforcement, too, that when you let people help you, you're allowing them to fulfill their purpose, of helping others, you see? Mm-hmm. So an encouragement there that allowing help is actually a service as well. Do you have any other questions?
I have a hard time, as I said yesterday.
Yeah,
you're saying that. I have a hard time doing that, but this past year I definitely have seen where I can't do it all alone. And
yeah,
I mentioned that I had, before I prided myself on being so independent, mm-hmm. and I still know that I am, but I'm glad that I can finally open up to let others into my life to help me along.
Let's scoot that forward a little. So I think that what that feels like to me is the calling out to your dad too. Losing your dad when you're so young, when you still need a dad. And so feeling like, you know what I mean? Like if I need to be independent is like is really asking, it's a kind of inside out way of asking for your dad. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But at the same time, there's a bit of resistance because there was grief, Sure. And so when you had that moment where you were actually able to really ask for help in a profound way and really receive it, then, things just really shifted with Mo.
They did.
Yeah.
They did.
It's big.
As I said, he was the catalyst for change in my life.
Animals are open vessels for divine is the best way that I can say it. So they're much more natural than we are. They're better with unconditional love. And so when we call out for a sign, animals can receive the energy from the universe and just be that sign for us and be that help. And Mo's really pining for the hot dogs.
I know, but I'm so surprised he's
doing
just
so well.
Here so nice in this chair.
He's doing so well. And he's not trying to get the hot dogs too much.
It's like, I know I shouldn't, but yeah. I can't help it.
And we were talking yesterday too. We were talking about your sensitivity, you're very empathic yourself. When did you discover this about yourself?
I probably in terms of actually realizing what it was, and maybe in the last year or so.
Okay.
But really, I know looking back, I've always just had this desire to help others, to help other people, to mediate situations, kind of make sure everyone feels comfortable. And I get anxiety about making sure others feel okay and comfortable.
Right.
But I don't know. I just feel like I have to take that on, that responsibility of making others feel at ease.
I love that Mo is really a great example of just being yourself completely, though.
Yeah.
You know? Because he's not concerned about, he's not an anxious dog in that maybe he internalizes things, but he's comfortable with who he is, right? Yes. You know, you see some dogs and they're like actually like kind of shell shot all the time. And he's just very present with who he is, and that's cool. And I think that's a great example. What do you think, Dustin?
He's very loud and proud.
He's out. I'm Mo, and I'm proud of it. I was trying to see if he had a name before, and he did. I've actually forgotten it. But it had something with an E at the end. E sound, something E, like whether it be Manny or something like that. That's what he heard from his humans before. Huh. But I can't.
Manny, Sammy.
Something
Larry.
like that. He says, but I'm Mo, man.
He's Mo now.
I want to remind you guys, if you have a story you'd like to share on the air about connecting with how an animal may have saved your life, changed your life, 323-524-2599. If you have any questions about how animals work with us in our lives and are that divine vessel to help us in our life purpose. I asked Mo about his life purpose, and it's just like, I'm just being me, dude. Like he is young still, so that he does he's completely content, but it's really just about being who he is and allowing that joy to just flow to him. You guys just have such a great balance, so it's kind of interesting. I don't feel him wanting for anything like, oh, I need to be taking care of mom. I need to be protecting and everything. It's just kind of, it is. Yeah. So what else has been some interesting week? I kind of stopped your story earlier about all of the different synchronicities. We were talking about at the shelter and then picking him up. And we had a few days of difficulty, after that. And then the stuff happened with the Dodo. That's pretty amazing.
Well, the Dodo ended up happening back in, I guess it was about a month or so, a month and a half ago that the video actually came out. Are you trying to tell us something?
You want to tell the story, Mo? Yeah.
I feel like I should
put the mic over
towards him.
Mo, what do you have to say? He says, pretty much I have to say hot dogs. Sing, Mo.
So it was in January during my birthday that I ended up wanting to do a bit of a fundraiser, Facebook, giving back to One Love Pitbull for being there for us, especially during the first months were very difficult. I had never had a pit bull before. I was really nervous. He was a lot of dog for me. He's very strong.
He weighs about the same as you.
About half my weight for sure. But he's just all muscle and he's just very strong. And I lived in a studio apartment at the time, and I was just like, how am I going to, deal with this dog, especially having to work? And so we did the trainings, but I also spent a lot of time one-on-one with him every day, hours before and after work. I think one thing also, just kind of segueing a little bit, that he taught me was to just stop trying to, I guess, be so... trying to fill up my time with things.
Be present, really.
Being present, exactly.
Yeah, they're so great at teaching us presence.
I would, have the hardest time just sitting at home by myself. I always felt like I had to be doing something and seeing people. Anyways, so we decided to do a Facebook fundraiser, and we raised a little bit of money for One Love. And with that, I had gone ahead and made my own video just to try to tell the story a little bit. And some friends of mine said, "Oh, you know what? You should submit that to the Dodo and see if they might like it." And so we did. And a couple months after I submitted it through their website, they reached out and said, "We'd love to do a story on Mo." And that interview happened in April with Keith at the Dodo. He was fabulous. And it was, a month and a half ago that it probably aired. And I was not... It was just so good. He just did such a good job of really capturing the story in 5 minutes, which was longer than what the average pity video airs. And he just touched on everything. You know, he touched on the fun fact of his screaming. It touched on the story of how we found each other, came across each other, included my father, and then kind of just exactly ended with, you know, the pitties being great dogs.
Because this is actually something that, I mean, it surprises me because I have absolutely no fear of any particular kind of dog. I grew up with dogs. We had several Dobermans who are, you know, breeds that are a little bit more they're strong as well, and have a an association with that turning thing where they could actually turn on you. And I think that's just completely stress if that happens with a dog. And so for me, it's really surprising that people believe this, you know, whatever hype, I guess you would say, this misinformation that they're dangerous by nature.
By nature.
Yeah.
Right. Just
because they're physically strong. I mean, honestly, most dogs could, if they needed to, do damage to a human. Sure. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
It's
well,
ridiculous.
I didn't tell you this before, but I actually...
That's a good one. I like when he does that.
A little crowing kind of. Sounds like a bird when he does that. You know, when I was 12, I actually was bit in the face here by a golden retriever. And it was a pretty...
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
Pretty big bite. So I mean, it's nothing against the breed of any dog. And sometimes I don't even think it's against the owners. I think animals act out just the way we do when we're scared, when we're angry, when we're stressed.
Right.
So I think that we as humans, we think that animals should just act perfectly, and if they don't, then they're bad.
Right. Well, that's especially mammals. Mammals are so similar to one another. I mean, everything in the world has feelings, and everything in the world is aware. Everything, you know, there's consciousness in absolutely everything. But mammals, we are dogs and cats and, you know, animals. They have the access to all the same emotions, the same desires, the same kinds of drives and interests, and just, you know, we are really not that dissimilar. Just because their faces don't move the same ways that ours do, you know what I mean? Like, that's a weird kind of projection.
Right.
But yes, of course, there are humans, obviously, that either have a psychological break, or they have maybe either mental illness or stress because of what has happened to them. Animals are exactly the same way. And there's the thing that is similar breed in a particular breed is, well, yeah, the physical attributes, of course. You know, he has a big, beautiful, strong face, but that doesn't mean that it's because he tears human flesh. That's so weird to me that people assume that.
Right.
And any stories of pit bulls or large dogs harming humans are just sensationalized.
They are.
You know, I'm sure there are just as many. The only time I've ever had a sort of negative experience with a dog was with like a smallish mutt, just like a mixed breed, non-breed. And I was running down a residential street, and a dog had gotten out of I think he had just gotten out of his yard. He didn't have a collar on or anything. He just started chasing me. But he could have taken a big chunk out of my calf.
Sure.
Fortunately, I stopped, and I just did like kind of the bear thing. I was like, no! And he went, oh, yikes. And he took off. Like, scary lady.
I think a lot of people forget that dogs act a lot on emotion, just like we do.
Absolutely.
And it God, I just kind of lost my train of thought there. But they're half the training of dogs is within yourself. I mean, you can't just automatically assume them to know how to sit or to walk properly. You know, you have to give that appropriate energy to train them and to train yourself on how to handle the dog you have.
Yeah, we as humans go to school from very young. We're taught by our parents how to speak, how to walk,
how to be in the world.
Exactly.
How to adapt.
Exactly.
To a specific world. And that's what we're asking domesticated animals is to adapt to our culture.
Exactly.
And you're so right, Dustin. That's actually something that I talk to my clients about as an animal communicator. If they're having issues with their animal, is that it has so much to do with the energy that you're holding. That's what Cesar Millan talks about too. He talks about calm, assertive energy, but you know, when you're trying to get them to do a specific thing, like you want them to sit, you actually have to be in the affirmative energy of them sitting, rather than what we tend to do is, oh, he's not going to sit again. Like inside,
right?
They are telepathic and they feel that, and they're like, oh, I'm not supposed to sit then because mom's saying don't sit. Yes, that's what we see. They see in our minds, basically feel that we're seeing them not sitting, you know?
So we almost have to really, in our own positive energy that we're transferring to them, is almost picture them sitting as we're asking them to do
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. Picture them sitting. Believe in it. Affirm it. And by the way, that goes to how we actually speak to animals, whether aloud with words or in our minds. We actually want to speak in affirmative language, affirmative intention, because they don't understand negating. So if you say don't be scared, the subject of that sentence is be scared. They don't really do that. It's a weird thing that humans do.
Sure.
So if we wanted our animal to be relaxed and calm, we actually channel that energy ourselves. And if you want to have audible words back it up, then you could say be calm, be relaxed, we're safe, everything is good, that kind of energy. And that's actually because they're telepathic, because the subtle vibrational language and energy is how we actually all fundamentally communicate with one another, humans alike.
Yes, I agree with that.
Is he getting over it?
I'm just afraid he's going to fall off the side of his chair.
He's like, look deep into my eyes and give me more hot dogs.
Well, we are almost out of time. So are there any other thoughts you want to share, especially about how you could support One Love Pitbull or be in contact with you and Mo? And
Sure. Well, we do have our Instagram, Mo the Screaming Staffy. It's all one word. And we're still in very beginning phases of figuring out what's been going on with us in terms of his newfound fame and all that. But even before the idea of submitting our content to the Dodo was there, I learned very quickly that I wanted to be an advocate and supporter of pit bulls and shelter dogs in general. And I think, I was saying this to Dustin this morning, that it is wonderful to promote adopting dogs. But I think the other thing to have in mind is that when people decide they want a pet, that they have to be committed to that pet.
Yes.
And so, you have a lot of times where people do end up adopting animals, which is great, but then they quickly realize they don't have the time, they don't have the resources, they don't have the energy for the animal. And so they end up back in the shelter or abandoned. And I think it just comes down to really, I think, first realizing what your bandwidth is, your capacity,
right.
And figuring out how to help in a way that you are helping maybe dogs, but if it can't be on a full time.
Right, in another way. I agree. And, realizing that when you adopt an animal into your family, that they are family.
They are family.
And that bandwidth, like you say, sure, you assess it at that time, but it's a long relationship and it may get challenged, but it gets challenged if you have human children too. I was in my 20s. I had a really rough time in my 20s, and I had 2 birds and a cat, and I know how hard it can be. It was hard enough to just house myself. But if you just keep affirming, then that challenge, you overcome it, and it's a really beautiful obstacle and they help you with it. It's really amazing.
They definitely do. Yeah, that's what it comes down to, is what you give to them is really minimal in what they end up giving back to you.
Right. Well, this has been just wonderful. I want to thank you, all three of you, for coming into town. He's like, that's it. She said I'm done.
No, thank you. Thank you very much for having us. We've enjoyed the trip out to LA, and this was really something special for us to do.
Thank you for sharing your stories and for your time and your sweet Mo, and support it. Like Kristin said, if you can't rescue, if you can't welcome an animal into your family at this time, then maybe you can support in some other ways. You know, $5 would help the One Love Pitbull. Is that what it's called?
One Love Pitbull Foundation. OneLoveArizona.org.
Or, you know, honestly sharing someone's story. You share, if you follow Kristin, you'll see that she's sharing some animals who need to be adopted. They need homes. That's also something you can do, supporting in that way, because that can help someone else connect with their forever family. Well, again, thank you, Dustin. Thank you, Mo. Thank you for Kristin for coming on Charmed Life today. And thank you, everyone. I hope to join you all will join again next week. We'll be here live at 11 a.m. Pacific. Thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.